Today we're going to have a special guest on, and we're going to have a little chat about archery and some game calls. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm your host today on Arch Talk 101, and we have Shawn on the line with us today, and we're going to have him introduce himself and tell a little bit of something about himself, how he got started in archery, and what he's going on. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Shawn Kotchey. I'm the owner of Millcreek Valley Game Calls. I got started in archery probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old. Started with the old style bows. So kind of an antique or an older person in that retrospect, but yeah, that's where I started at.
And what age did you start at?
I think it was 10, 11, 12,
10, 11?
somewhere around in there is when I started taking interest in, actually learning to shoot a bow.
Yeah, I started about that same age, but that was back in the 60s when I started.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, you're a little bit older than me, but I started like, recurve, learning to naturally shoot and that kind of stuff. Because when I grew up, my family, we didn't have a lot of money. So, it wasn't like you could go out and like buy a compound bow or something. So we, sort of had like a junky recurve and just learned to, shoot different stuff, and really focusing on shooting that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much what I started with.
Yeah, when I started, your option was recurve or longbow. That was it. There was no compounds. It was about
Yes.
10 years later when the compound started in the 70s when they started. And I picked those up, and then I still have recurves that I shoot, but my very first recurve was a 25-pound fiberglass Ben Pearson bow. I still have it. I won't shoot it because the fiberglass is starting to split a little bit, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't even, there's a string on it, but I won't string it up just because, it's worth more to me as just kind of a memory piece than it is to actually go out and shoot. Because I do have a PSE recurve that I go out and shoot, which is set up for bow fishing.
Gotcha. Yeah, my dad had an old Parsons compound when they first come out, and I remember that was his bow. Like I said, I had to recurve, and then I finally like graduated to like a compound by the time I was like, I think I was 15, 16 years old. And then when I started doing a compound bow, that's where I really was able to. And here in Pennsylvania, they didn't have the antler restriction until like 25 years ago. So when I was younger, anything with a 3-inch spike was legal. And my first buck that I killed with a compound was a 6-point that had just happened to be up in the middle of nowhere. And I was with my dad, and I remember, shooting it for the first time, and then jumping down off, basically out of the tree stand and say, "Dad, I shot one. I can't believe it," and let him know that, I killed it. And it was the first time at 15 years old that I actually started to figure out the rut of how, you could grunt to the deer and, use scents and that kind of stuff. And once I saw that, I was hooked.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you get after the call. I remember one time I was out with my son. He wasn't old enough to hunt yet, but I had him all camoed up and everything in there. And I says, here's the call. You get to use it. With a deer, you're only 3 reactions you're going to get out of them. They're going to ignore it, they're going to come to you, or run away. And
yes,
it doesn't matter who's making the call. And I tell them, if they're walking in, just don't call while they're walking in. They're already coming what we want. We don't want them to track them up to us in the tree. I was at a stand, and I had I think a ladder stand, and I put up a hang-on stand that you can get to right off the ladder stand, and climbed up, strapped him in, and away we went.
And that's another revolution that we talk about when I first started archery hunting. What I first started doing the archery hunting was uh, the different tree stands. My dad, I remember us going to a sportsman show. I believe it was the one in Harrisburg, a real big one, and we got the big man tree stand. And I always had the Loggy Bayou old ones, and then
Yeah.
before that, the Loggy Bayous, we had it was like a wooden platform. I called them the death traps. I mean, I don't know how many guys got hurt off of climbing trees with them, or slipping down the tree, or, just falling, the plywood breaking, or it's crazy.
Yeah. The wood is nice because it's kind of permanent, but after so long, you're not sure it's safe. And I've seen some stands that were unsafe to even get into.
Yeah, exactly. But we've come a long way with a lot of the technology and stuff now, but it's way better. Like I said, even the old Loggy Bayous, I remember there was some of them that certain trees you just have to watch, because that metal band, or the rubber that was on the metal band, it would slip down a tree. Certain trees, like maples and stuff, you have to sort of get those ones with the good bark, like a good cherry or something, or an oak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you felt a
You
little bit
definitely
more
don't want them
secure.
sliding down, that's for sure.
Oh, and I think we've all done it. Give you that second scare, give you a heart attack. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I always used hang-ons, or now recently I started using ladder stands. The hang-ons, they're nice. You go screwing in the steps, and I've got, it's like some of the trees, like locust, is just near impossible to screw them in without pre-drilling a hole. So I used to take a battery powered drill and pre-drill the holes, then put the pegs in, and just to get them going in.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I've seen some where they put the stands up and you're climbing up the peg, and then you basically just bang your head on the bottom of the tree stand. It's like, how are you going to get in here? And then they just kind of climb up over it. And it's like, like,
Yeah,
dude,
definitely.
you're asking to fall out of that tree stand. and,
Yes.
and, that's more bow hunters are hurt getting in or getting out of their tree standing or anything else.
Yes. Yes, it's a number one. Backs, shoulders, you name it. I sort of want to circle back and sort of tell you about, like, how I sort of got into the outdoor industry with the game call stuff, and
Yeah, that'd be good.
that kind of stuff that we were talking about earlier. My uncle was one of the Quaker Boy team members, one of the originals, and I'm sure that your audience is well aware of Quaker Boy game calls. They're
Yeah.
basically on leading, running at their time, excellent calls that everybody used. And my uncle, I would get test some products out and that kind of stuff, and just going to shows with them when they would do that kind of stuff. And then finally, as I got a little bit older, I worked for another game call company, and they were here from Pennsylvania, and would go to shows with them. And I just really loved the industry, and really the innovation kind of stuff. And let me do a little bit of background on myself of why I even
Sure.
did. I was in the military, and when I came back home from overseas, I had post-traumatic stress, and I couldn't figure out, well, and I was getting into law enforcement, because that's still what I do as a job. I'll retire here in a couple of years, but sort of helped me deal with a lot of the stressors and hidden stressors of the job. Was I met an old Vietnam vet to where I live at now. He's recently passed, but he sort of got me into woodworking to deal with things, and he says, well, what do you like to do? He says, like to, I see you're struggling, because, Vietnam, I don't think most of those guys, they never were welcomed home. A lot of them had a lot of rough stuff. Like the World War II vets, the Vietnam vets, Korean War vets. Those guys didn't really have a great structured, how do I want to say, like a structured group, people they could talk to about things that they had done, seen, and they sort of relied on each other to help through the process. And that's basically what he did. He took me underneath his arm and said, "Hey, do you like the outdoor industry? What do you like?" And I said, "Well, I like inventing stuff. That's what sort of, my hobby. I like to hunt." And he knew that I was like really big into the turkey and deer hunting. And he's like, "Hey, um, I work with woods myself." And I'm like, "Oh," he's like, "Why don't you come over to the shop? I'm going to show you some stuff." And I just saw some of the stuff he was doing. And all of a sudden I just thought to myself, well, man, I've been working for all these outdoor industry companies and, doing seminars and that kind of stuff. And I said, boy, I really would like to get into this. So I went to my dad. My dad had already owned a business, and I have a background of going to college and stuff before I went to the military. A little bit of business sense, and I said to my dad, I said, "Hey, I'm gonna try this out." I said, "Would you want to go into it with me?" He says, "No." He says, I have no inkling on wanting to do that." He's like, because at that time my dad was ready to retire himself. He was only a couple years out, and I was like, all right. So I went to my mom, of all people. I said to my mom, I said, "Hey, Mom," I said, "listen," I said, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but Dad doesn't want to do it. Doesn't think that it'll work. It won't go. Would you like to start a business venture?" And she's like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to go into the game call business." She's like, "I don't know anything about it." I said, "You don't need to know anything about it." And she's like, "What do you mean?" I says, "You do Dad's books and everything else, and you know how to do all this stuff. That's all I need. But I need you to do I can do everything else." I said, "I just need you to take care of the money side." And she was like, "Well, yeah, I can do that." So we took out our first loan and bought the equipment and stuff like that, and the rest is history. I mean, we're almost on 15 years. It'll be this spring. So we've been doing really well at it. And I started doing call making contests, for deer, turkey calls. I have a revolutionary deer call that I came up with. It's the inhale exhale deer call. I was really really intrigued with the deer's vocalization of trying to get it perfectly right. So I sort of I went to the outdoor industry and sort of like really seeing what they had, like the plastic reeds, and a lot of these game call companies had these plastic reeds that as soon as you would blow them, get some uh, like breath or whatever on them, a little bit of humidity, and it was cold out, they would freeze up. Can you relate in any fashion? If you know what I'm
Oh,
talking about? And
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
whoo, 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 and then it sounds like a duck call if it finally breaks loose or scares the game, or you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah,
I finally said, like, we got to come up with something. So I started researching, and you know, here again, Roy, I'm not the smartest block in a tool. I was no like brainchild in college or high school or whatever. I just was the guy that squeaked by. But here again, get a kid interested or get a person interested in something they love, and they'll never work a day in their lives. So
right.
here I am, just like juices are flowing in the brain. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, so I start going back to the business of my dad. My dad owns a fire. He owned a fire extinguisher business in Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And what I learned was brass does not freeze. That's why you can set those fire extinguishers, when they're outside, like you go to a gas pump and they sit there all winter, those chemical ones, they just sit outside. And the reason that is because there's a brass stem in there and it has the brass guts that won't freeze it up. So I start thinking, and I start working with this other parts company and came up with a channel that was, number one, was metal, and then number two, it has a mylar reed to it, but I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't stick. So what I did was I was able to put in the reed a brass button, must I say, and then like brass so that it wouldn't freeze. And from there, um, we went on with an inhale, exhale deer call. It's pretty much hands free. You can put it in your mouth. You can exhale out and you get the buck grunt. And then you inhale, you get the doe bleat. Now, originally, the call did have where you could adjust the reed. There was I put a gum band on it that you could adjust, you wanted a deeper sound and all that kind of stuff. What I've learned with people is the more that you leave things open like that and they play with them, things get broke and you're replacing calls. So I was like, you know what? I need to internally house this so that people, you set the reed, I set the reed myself, and then you just let it alone and let people, have that buck grunt and then let them have the doe bleat. The more that you let people mess with a call, the less things, and I also came up with the method when I was in the Marine Corps was the KISS method. We always said, keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
So I sort of went back to the original thought process there of the keep it simple, stupid. And we house it in a walnut barrel and it does the buck grunt and it does the doe bleat. Inhale, exhale, all in one call. And I just went with that. And we've sold a pal. Matter of fact, a kid that I went to high school with, and I'll guarantee a lot of your listeners know who I'm talking about. And I've done show with the bone collectors, like Michael Waddell and all those different guys doing seminars. I went to school with a kid named Chris Kiefer. Him and his brother Casey Kiefer, they were in that Project Dropped, and they also do a couple other shows like where they're dropped in Alaska, and then they do a couple of whitetail shows. They're on a Sportsman's and Outdoor channel. I sent one to my buddy Chris, and I said, "Hey, Chris, tell me, you're a deer expert. What do you think of this call? Do you think it's close? Do you think that?" So I sent him one, and I hadn't heard anything from him like 6 months, and I'm like, "Oh boy, maybe he thought it sucked and he threw it away and just or whatever." And next thing I know, those guys sort of go covert on you, and you don't hear anything for a while because they're out busy hunting day in and day out, and I sort of forgot about it. And all of a sudden I get this huge text from him. He's like, "Shawn, you freaking knocked it out of the park. Dude, I got to show you this video. We're going to put it on YouTube, dude. And it's just, it's incredible." He says, "I'm out in Kansas." He says, "It's not the biggest buck that I ever killed." He's like, "But it's the coolest buck that I ever killed." He's like, and by the way, it's on YouTube. It's called Mr. November. Okay. Cause that's what I named the deer call was Mr. November, because most of your bucks come in rut. I mean, sometimes it's late October, but majority of the bucks across the United States come in November. So it's the Mr. November grunt call. And like I said, big, huge explanation. And I watched the video and you can clearly see this buck's walking away, and he takes out my deer call and he's like, "Rah, rah, rah." And this thing just turns around. And I mean, as soon as you see it, you're like, this thing's a stud. And it just turns around, comes back right into bow range and just like, releases an arrow on it and then he kills it. And then he's like sending me all these pictures of it. And, from a standpoint, being a hunter yourself, but to actually create something with your own hands, your own mind, and actually get to see it work in the outdoor industry with somebody that's as big as him, it's just been amazing. I mean, I put it into call making. See what happens is the NWTF and what they do is they have these call making contests, and you can put calls in. They have deer calls, turkey calls, mainly turkey calls, but you can put deer calls in. And I put this thing in there, and it placed a couple of times second, third in the world. And I'm like, you had it like with the sounds, but really for sending it to somebody and it actually out in the field and you're seeing the production, it was just amazing. And I mean, it's been a journey from there. Once we knew that, and then there's the outdoor news that we had. Then I started making, like I said, with the turkey calls and that kind of stuff. I got interviewed and we were in Outdoor Life at one time, and it snowballed from there. So I'm really happy to be a deer hunter, but not only, but also be in the outdoor industry of the leading technology, I guess, and just, I love everything about the outdoors. I love giving seminars. I love creating calls that the normal consumer that can use. And there's nothing more satisfied for a guy like me that has post-traumatic stress, that was having a hard time, be able to come back and relate to people, not only hunting, but telling me the success stories, and just going from there. I mean, just everything. It's just been awesome, to where some people wouldn't even take a chance on you when you wanted to start a company, and then you took that step, and you made it. So I would like to think that I've changed, some way, a little bit of the hunting industry, but I mean, I'm just a small fraction of some of the bigger companies, but I truly do enjoy it.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of stuff in there. And there's something to making your own stuff like that. And I know you mentioned, woodworking, and I do a lot of woodworking myself. And here many years ago, I said, I'm gonna make me some calls. So I started off with a duck call, and just single reed ones, and I go into deer calls. In fact, the deer call I carry with me is one I made myself, and it's just kind of fun to make them. And I've made several and sold several of them, and but they're the plastic channels and the normal stuff. But being a single reed, they don't freeze up quite as bad as some of the double reed ones.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha. Yeah, that's one thing people have asked me. Hey, why don't you get into duck calls? I'm like, no. So I do a crow call, I do a coyote howler. I said I do a deer call, and I got a lot of turkey calls. I said the main thing is really, to be honest with you, was turkey hunting was my real love. And there's really only two things that I really have enough time for as far as hunting goes, and that's the archery in the fall, and then fall turkey hunting and spring turkey hunting. It's really what I really have a lot of time for anymore.
Yeah.
Taking the kids out and stuff. I have two young daughters, so taking them out, and they enjoy that too. So.
No, that's good. Yeah. I can see getting into duck calls, because I made quite a few of them, and it's interesting. With the same reed, one call is going to sound different than the other call. It's
Oh
exact same
yeah.
reed in
Oh
all of them.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I find it's got to do with what type of wood it is. Different densities woods, tone chambers are
Mm.
different, as well as the shape. Different shape is going to give you different tone qualities. And I've had some that great feeder calls. You could do them nice, little soft, coaxing feeder calls. But if you're trying to do a hail call, they just break over and they sound like, they sound terrible. And then other
Yeah.
calls, you can't do a feeder call on them to save your life. But if you want to do that hail call, holler at them from miles away, it'll do it. It's the same
Oh
reed.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Well,
What's different?
and here's the other thing. You can. A lot of people don't understand. Just by the glue that you use to glue some things together, I can change your sound altogether.
Oh yeah, because it changes the
Especially with a
characteristics.
turkey call. I mean, yeah, definitely. Woods. Oh my. Um, I was fortunate enough to meet another person in my travels that was friends with my uncle and those guys that used to do turkey calling back in the day. And his name was David Tealberg. And David knew Dee Dee Adams, which Dee Dee Adams was the original guy of what they call as a pot call or a turkey call, slate call, crystal
Right.
call. And he then had his own, after Dee Dee died, David started his own call company. It was called Top Calls, and it was Tealberg Outdoor Products. And one thing that stuck with me, and you take a little bit from everybody you meet. Let's just
Right.
say that like you said, you're a big archery person. You might meet Chuck Adams. You take a little bit from Chuck Adams. You take a little bit from Michael Waddell. If you're having that conversation, everybody has something to teach. You just have to figure out, what do you want to take out of it? Well, mine was David, and we've still been friends. We almost talk weekly. And what he said was, take your turkey calling or deer call to this level. And I said, okay, what are you talking about? He says, pretend it's a musical instrument. He said, your finest string guitars, your finest things, and really didn't get it at first. And I was like, what are you talking about? You know? And then I just started Google searching basically, you know, your guitars, your finest wood pieces. And here I'm learning about exotic woods, exotic, finishes, exotic, you name it, acoustically sound wood, and I'm like, wow, this is like opening up a whole new parallel. Like before it was like, okay, we're going to start with our maple, our walnut, or just American hardwoods, American chestnut, if you're able to find it without the blight, hole, the wormholes in it, or, and the next thing you know, this complete window opens up and you're like, wow, exotics. Once I open up the book on exotics, like exotic woods, look out. I have changed sounds, can get them better. Sometimes you'll laminate some of these exotic woods, you know what I mean? And you sort of meld them together. And there's a lot of trial and error with glues and I could go on and on, but what I truly found is once you go with these exotics, I mean, they're a lot more expensive. I mean, and you're catering to a different kind of people that want to buy expensive kind of wood stuff too. You know what I mean? It looks pretty, sounds pretty, and then you have to learn about the exotic woods too. Like I'll give you an example, cocobolo. Okay. It's a pretty
Nice
wood.
wood.
It's like a darker brown. Yeah. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Great wood to work with. Don't inhale it. Make sure you're wearing a mask because that can cause cancer and and it's really, sneezing and irritants to the lungs. The other thing that I learned about cocobolo is it's also poisonous to your skin. So, I wanted to make a deer call out of the cocobolo, which if you use to touch your lip with it, you'll get these blisters and everything else all over them. So it'll work if you have a mouthpiece, but if you just put it straight to your lips, it can cause blistering and all kinds of different stuff. So, really got to be careful with these exotic woods.
Right.
Just and that's trial and error. I have a book with all the different kinds of hardwoods and stuff in it, and then you have your Janka scale, the hardness of this of the wood. Learning that, and I mean, just there's so much. I just thought, we'll just get into, we're making turkey calls, okay, and you could spend $5,000 in glues. You could spend $100,000 on woods. And then getting the equipment that you need, I mean, you can go low scale on your equipment. Like you could buy like a Harbor Freight lathe, or you can go buy one of these $6,000 lathes. I mean, it all depends on what your comfort level is and what your expenditure is. For me, it was I had to learn off the cheap stuff and then keep upgrading.
Right.
But,
yeah.
I mean, for intricate workings and stuff, but man, I tell you, what a journey though. I mean, like I said, I love the outdoor industry. I love just, doing the seminars. I love building the calls. I love going to the shows, love talking to the guys, and learning as much as you can, especially from other professionals or just everyday guys like us that, that hunt and go out there and, there's big controversy right now. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but they changed, we're talking deer hunting, not so much archery, but this is more of the deer hunting in Pennsylvania. They changed the opener. It used to be on a Monday. So guys would come up on a Friday to their camps because Pennsylvania is a big, huge tradition state where guys have hunting camps and then they would come up for first day of deer. And they changed the opener from being on a Monday to a Saturday. There's a lot of people complaining. So I think the Game Commission is going to take a vote on changing it back to Monday. You know, guys came from Pittsburgh and they traveled up into the upper counties that don't have as much money. And when they would do that, when the opener was on Monday, they could come up on a Friday, spend all weekend, you know, buying their booze, their cigarettes,
Right.
you know, meats, game call stuff, you know. And me being in rural Pennsylvania, because I moved away from Pittsburgh when I got out of the military, I started my career up here, which is an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes north of Pittsburgh. Now all my calls are in, you know, these local places. That's where I was getting a lot of my, you know, you're getting a lot of the monies and stuff like that. And guys are going into local economies. Well, once they did it on Saturday, the guys come up Friday night at dark, come up, shoot the deer, and then that's it. You know, before they used to, you know, sometimes they'd buy a firearm, they'd buy their bullets up here, they'd buy, you know, and it was really boost the economy in the northern counties.
Right.
And now that was a big one. But we're also fortunate though in Pennsylvania here, we have like a 6-week bow season. So, and here's another controversy that we have here in Pennsylvania. It was always like, before it used to be compound bows only. Well, now they passed, you know, a crossbow, and these guys, you know, they're, you know, hey, that's a cross gun. You know, that's a, you know, they've also let the youth hunt now at a younger age. Before, you couldn't go and hunt until you're 12 years old and you took your hunter safety course and stuff. Now they have a mentored youth program where you can take the kids out as long as you're accompanied by an adult. You know, so these guys, you know, I think my daughter killed her first 8-point at like, I think she was either 7 or 8 years old, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I can see the good and I can see the bad, but you know, especially with the crossbow. I don't know what your thoughts are towards crossbows, or your general. You know, there's probably a mix in the audience that's listening to us right now,
Right.
of crossbows. And here's what I need to say about this. I think until your kids get to a certain age where they can pull a bow back, the compound or the crossbows are good for the kids, because you can still, if they really are showing interest in the hunting, you can take them out and they can hunt with a crossbow up until they get to learn or comfortable enough with a compound bow. Because both of my daughters have compound bows now. Before, when they first started, it was easier for them to you know, to shoot a crossbow.
Right. I know.
And maybe some of them older guys, you know.
Yeah, here in Nebraska, archery season starts September and goes through December 31st. So we have a long archery season, but we also have to share it with the 9 days for rifle, which starts on a Saturday, ends the following Sunday. And then the whole month of December is muzzleloader season. So yeah, it's kind of, we can be out there in the field during rifle, but we got to wear orange like the rifle hunters do. And the only problem is they're in December. Archers are out there in camo, but the muzzleloaders are out there with red, you know, the orange on. And
oh boy,
you know, so it's gonna be a little, you know, a little bit more, but you know, we have a lot more open areas here in Nebraska. It's not, you know, solid forest like it is, you know, out there in Pennsylvania. We do have a lot of forested areas, but I know a few years back, the game and parks decided to use archery. The crossbow is a valid weapon during archery season. Used to be you had to be handicapped where you couldn't draw back a bow and hold it. And then they changed it. They figured
just like here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Now you can use it in, you know, my definition of archery is as a stick with a string flinging another stick. And
yes, sir.
Does a crossbow fit that description? Yep. you know, so it's all archery. You know, it's a little different. And
well, here's my thing too. And I do, you know, obviously people wouldn't know my background unless they would like Google search or look it up. Okay. I go in to do all these youth field days. Okay. For Pennsylvania has a pretty large, at one time we had over 1.5 million deer hunters. Okay. We have a large youth field days that we have one field day that I do has 450 kids, and I do the turkey hunting station. So I try to get as many kids into the hunting as possible. And circling back of why I was talking to you about, that they allowed the crossbows and stuff. I mean, I can see where, we're losing the interest to Nintendo and all those, Sega games and all those video
Right.
games that these kids would rather play than actually getting them out in the woods and hunting. So I can see, you know, we need to get however way we need to get kids into the hunting, because we're starting to become like a dying breed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids don't want to spend the time it takes to get good with a compound bow, or even worse yet, a recurve or a longbow. Those take a lot more practice because, unless you shoot an Olympic style with a sight on it, I don't shoot recurves uh, with sights. I pick it up, I instinctively shoot. I don't use the arrow as a reference, or I just look at the target and shoot. And then I get a compound. Now that I'm looking for my anchor point, I'm looking for the kisser button, the peep, and all that. And I can't shoot a compound instinctively. I don't know why. It's a different weapon, and my mindset is different. Just like picking up a pistol or a rifle or shotgun, they're all shot differently. Same basic concept, but point and shoot.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Exactly. And it's like learning all over again, from changing from going to a gun or going to a bow or back and forth. It's the same concept of marksmanship, but it's a
Right.
different kind of apparatus is what you're looking through or what you're doing, and the concentration level. But yeah, basically it's all the same. It's like I said, I'm all in on getting kids into the outdoors and doing what we do. Conservation. Here's another thing I wanted to touch on is conservation. All right. I started looking into last couple of years. I mean, the NWTF that I work closely with, and there's another one called TFT, which is Turkeys for Tomorrow. They're really big into the habitat. What's going on with what's killing the turkeys. Like Pennsylvania, the same thing. We have the that one where the nymph goes into them and it can kill them. We have the chronic wasting disease knocking on our door for the deer herd. I believe a hunter today has to be more involved than he's ever been. Not only just being a hunter, but you also have to be like a conservationist too. You have to care.
Right.
You have to care about not taking too many of your species, helping the landowners with. We have a lot of farms around here. They plant the soybean and the corn. This year was the first year with my family's farm that we have here. We had some wells, the gas wells that they took out, and they ended up plowing them over and made it all smooth. So we had these like 1 little acre plots in the middle of the woods that we were able to turn into food plots. So we put some, chicorée, some clover, and some brash, that just little stuff. And I'm here to tell you what a game changer as far as a magnet for bringing in the deer and turkeys into that segregated area. I mean, I was able to harvest a turkey this year, and we'll go back into the bow hunting part with a bow this year. I got a nice long beard with a bow this year, 11.5-inch beard, 1.25-inch spurs. So that's a trophy in
Yeah.
the turkey world, and all because the habitat that we're talking about. Making it a little bit better for them to come in and feed and being able to harvest those animals, because obviously you can't hunt over bait in Pennsylvania. Some states do allow that kind of stuff, but Pennsylvania is one of the, no seed, corn, that kind of stuff can you hunt over bait. But a food plot, if you were to plant corn, is okay to hunt over. And or the like I said, the clover or whatever. And one thing about the American wild turkey is they can eat over 350 different subspecies of grass and plants, and I mean, they're pretty hardy animals, and they're just a survivor. Deer, they really, they can eat a lot of different things, but just not as much as a turkey. Biggest thing for turkey too is they need that. They're like a chicken. They need that scratch
Right.
to grind up their food. But I'll tell you, what a game changer putting a food plot in and just being able to hunt over it and just see how it works. I mean, we were having anything between 10 to 15 deer at a night when we would set up in a blind with my daughter. We would set up in a tree stand over the thing. I mean, it was amazing, And then the bucks. My number one rule with the deer hunting is I always tell my kids, where the does are at, your bucks are eventually going to come, because rut's going to come in during your bow season, and wherever the does are at, your bucks are going to come. They're either going to be bumping them in the butt, sniffing them around or whatever, and falling.
Right.
So sooner or later, when your doe comes, look behind them. Usually going to be a buck. Well, guess what? If you're in a food plot and you're full of does, your bucks are going to come in. And that was, we didn't get any shots this year. We didn't kill any does or any of the bucks in the food plot this year, but we could have. It's still hard trying to get your kid to not so much know how to be quiet, but making sure that they're making that right shot, making sure that lining everything up, because the last thing we want to do is injure an animal.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're harvesting correctly, and sometimes it's hard. And my kids play basketball now. They're in middle school, so it's hard on the amount of days you get to get out there too. So, but when we did go out, we saw deer every day in the bucks, and they're grunting, and we're grunting back at them, and just trying to get them to work out to get a shot. Just didn't work out this year. But hey, I always say, any day, your worst day in the woods is any day better than being in work or school. So,
right,
without a doubt. So, but
that is true. And just because you go out and don't get anything doesn't mean it's not a good day. I've seen some amazing things, as the sun's coming up in the morning. I remember one day, been many years ago now, that I'm sitting in a tree stand. It's not shooting time yet. My bow's hanging up on a hook I have there, and I'm watching the sun come up, and I'm starting to see the sun come up. I'm see frost forming on everything, and the sun is just shining through and reflecting off all the branches with the frost on it. And it's like, that was so cool. And then to drive home, all the evergreen trees along one road was all just frosted over. And it's like, that was a cool day. Didn't say anything, but
and here again, you're in the woods, you're with your kids. And I always relate it to this quote. She thinks we're just hunting. We're not. We're spending time together. We're sharing. We're talking. You got that one-on-one time. You're talking. You're communicating, and you're making memories. That's the biggest thing. And the older that I get, the more that I understand it. That I'm getting closer to that. I only got a couple more years, and I'm going to be at that 50-year-old mark. Now you're like looking at life, and you're like, how many more good years do you have left?
Yeah, and when you get into
those memories, and
your mid to late 60s, then it just, I don't do pheasant hunting anymore because I just don't do the walking.
Yeah. I mean,
and I figure if I'm going to walk for 3 birds or sit for a big deer, I'm going to sit for the big deer.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it makes you look at your own mortality.
Right.
Spending the right time with your kids and eventually grandkids, and just getting them out and showing them the sport. And the big thing that I stress with my daughters too. Yeah. Hey, would it be nice? It'd be great to go out and kill this big, huge 10-point, but nothing says that you have to kill anything when you go out either.
No.
Just enjoy nature. Just go out and enjoy what God created. Just go. Who cares if you don't see anything, or maybe you will see something. You don't get a shot. That's fine. Nobody says that you have to go out and kill something every time you go out. Just go out and enjoy yourself. Maybe you needed that stress relief off of out of your job that you have at that time. But maybe you just needed a couple of push away. Even Jesus went into the wilderness to get away from things, and he
Yeah.
went out and prayed. That's what I relate a lot of stuff to. Just go out and enjoy it. Anything's better than being, and holding that stress in. And the other thing that I like getting the kids into the outdoor industry, just hunting and fishing. I would rather them do that than be on drugs or alcohol or some other kind of stuff that's out there. Show the kids that there is more of a meaning in life. Now that's more apparent now. I think there's so many kids that are misguided anymore. I mean, my generation, we were worried about what was, certain things. This new generation, they're worried about they're confused on, they don't know what bathroom to use. I don't know. I just, like I said, get the kids out there, get them involved in something, make them enjoy it. I know they're not going to see, something every time, but maybe hunting isn't for your kid, but maybe bow shooting is. I got a buddy, his daughter, she doesn't like to hunt because she doesn't want to kill anything, but that's cool. They go and kill the heck out of archery targets. They go to the 3D shoots, and she absolutely loves it. Who knows what that could lead into? Maybe she becomes a really good shooter and she goes out for the Olympic team. Who knows? Sky's the limit. But at least you went out and did something,
Well,
that's what I always say.
Last week, I interviewed a young lady that got into archery and is doing really good. So if you listen to this one, go back and listen to last week's podcast. It's an interesting story talking with her. And you just get into archery, for various different reasons. Maybe you just want something to do and you're not good at sports, and you know what, you pick up archery and you're excellent. There's a lot of reason to get into it. And one of the things that I found is, if you're under stress or you're not feeling good, or you got things going on, you're not going to shoot archery very well, because it forces you to relax. And that's what lots of times you go in and you're concentrating, you're focused on one thing, seeing that arrow hit the center of that target, and you're only focused on that and nothing else exists. And that's some of the things, get your focus. And it really does help too when you get some good training and learn how to shoot. I know I went through struggling with all kinds of things, and I know back in the early 90s, this guy's talking about back tension release, you're not pulling trigger, and I'm thinking, well, how do you know where it's going to get, where's it going to hit? And then once I learned it, and it's like, oh, now I understand. And then I started teaching it. I've been an archery instructor since 1995, so I've taught hundreds of people how to shoot, and that's the fun part, when you see somebody that's all of a sudden, they got 6-inch groups, at you 20 yards, and next thing you know, they're putting 3 arrows touching. And I do that all the time, so I do a lot of teaching, and one of the things that I have is I have an online coaching program that I offer to people. And I actually have a consultation call, 15-minute consultation call, that people can get on and see if coaching might be for you. And I'll leave a link in the description, how to get to that form, for those that are interested in seeing if they can take their skills to the next level. And I basically teach, archery is 64,000 years old, and it's been around for a long time. I don't see it going away anytime soon. There's a big following in it. And, that's just one of those things that it's been around, and it's a skill. Once you learn the skill, especially if you start off with a recurve or longbow, and you need a bow, just grab a stick, put a string on it, grab another stick, and put a point on it. And there's your archery equipment.
Well, and you know what? Archery is a lot easier, to be honest with you. Archery is a lot easier to get into a school and start an archery team than it would a rifle team. I mean, if you remember back in high school, there were kids that, they had the rifle teams all over the place. Those are pretty much
Right.
non-existent now, but they still have the archery. They're more adapt to having an archery in a school than they are an actual firearm.
Right. I know when I was in high school, I was on the rifle team, all 3 years of high school, and we're shooting 22s, in a range downstairs.
Yep.
And yeah, now they pretty much, if they're doing it, I think it's like air guns or something. If they're still doing it,
Yes.
I haven't looked
Pellet
recently.
guns. Yep.
Yep. But archery, archery is in, middle schools, grade schools, high schools, college. Archery is, all over the place. And those that are, interested in doing something different, it's a team sport, but yet it's more individual, because the only one you're really competing against yourself. Are you getting better? And that's where, some of your schools have some good, good coaching in there, and some don't. You'd have to just check it out and see, and that's where, finding a good coach comes in. And there's a lot of good coaches out there. And if you don't like the one that you're with, find a different one. There's lots of
Most
them.
definitely.
People are going to connect in. It's like, okay, this person's teaching style, I'm not feeling it. And you go to somebody else, and it's like, oh, they might be telling them exactly the same thing, but it's the same way. It's just the way they tell it. And
Yep.
that's one of the things that just gets there. And you've got to spend some time, learning. And the problem I seen one time, my son, when he was doing trap, is each person told him to do something a little different. So by the time he got done listening to everybody else, he was shooting worse than he did the first time he shot his shotgun.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to have one good teacher than it is to have 30.
Yeah. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's just a chance you got to take sometimes. But like a firearms instructor has told me before, boy, I'd like to get to you before you learn any bad habits. That's another one, with shooting anything. So
Well, and what I've seen is, if you develop a bad habit and then you go out, I've seen some of the archery things, they'll post things. So how's my form? They say, well, just shoot more. If you shoot with bad form, you're only going to develop that bad
you're
form.
always going to shoot with bad form. Yes.
Right. And I've seen so many people, it's like, I see these videos, and even some of the professional ones that do this for a living. I seen one, I forget who it was. His fingers above the trigger, he gets ready to fire, and he just slams on the trigger. Like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is on video. He's doing a hunting video. And I see this like, okay, you need to come to me. I can help you shoot better, so you don't have to do that. And I do that, and I shoot, I've used back tension when I shoot. I have a handheld release that I hunt with. And, I can force it to fire if I want, but, I don't. I've gone through the same shot process I do at, shooting target. And I use a wrist strap when I get in cold weather, because I don't like grabbing that cold aluminum that's hanging off my D-loop, when it's cold, because I need to have my hand, basically I have a glove that has the fingers gone, and the seam between the thumb and index finger is gone. So I can feel the trigger, because if I can't feel the trigger, I don't know what's going on. So I do that. And when it gets really cold, then I use, when it straps on, I only need my index finger out, because I only need to touch it with my index finger. I can keep the rest of them cold. And I can keep my hand in my pocket too, with the strap on one, or with either one, the hand release, I keep my hand in my pocket. But when it's weather like it is now, I'm not sure the temperatures today, but it's cold and windy. And, when you grab something that's freezing and you had your hand in your pocket, and it might be a little moisture on it, and next thing you know, your hand freezes to the release.
Yeah, definitely.
Or it feels like it does.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Well, one of the things that I also have is I have the Facebook Archery Talk 101. And in that group, we have people that, you can take a video of yourself shooting, upload it to the video, and one of the instructors will take a look at it. myself with over 25
Ah,
years,
now
and
see,
there's,
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
and that's something we offer into the group for those getting in the group. Um, I don't allow any links to anything outside, just because I don't want it to turn into a place that, everybody's posting, here, buy my t-shirt, do this, do that. And it's like, no, it's just
I know
all,
you get that kind of crap. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I gotcha.
They might get them posted, but they don't stay long because I check them every morning and I
Yeah.
delete them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I've deleted, and if they posted in 3 different places, I kick them out of the group because it's a private group, and that's part of the rules.
Well, yeah.
No outside links.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you want to upload a video, as long as you're not uploading a YouTube video, because we don't know where it takes you outside of there, and I want it focused on just archery, and that's why we have it that way, so that it's a safe place to go talk about archery. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like I
Well,
tell
that's what it was developed for. Yeah.
right, the only dumb question is the one you didn't ask, because once you ask it, it's not a dumb question because you didn't know.
Well, I
So
always tell her, yeah, there is no stupid questions. Rather
right,
you ask the question than you get out in the field, and the next thing you know, you make a mistake, or you do something really bad that could get you into trouble.
right.
Especially like the kids. I used to teach the hunter safety for the kids. I say, listen, this is right now is when you ask your questions. Do it now instead of you don't oh, was I allowed to shoot 2 deer? No.
Well,
That kind of stuff.
depends on how many tags you have and what type of tags you have.
Well, see, in Pennsylvania, yeah, like I said, in Pennsylvania, you may, like, I'll use an example of the turkey. You may have 2 tags, but you can only shoot 1 per day.
Oh yeah.
You can't shoot them both in the same day. I mean, just stuff like that. Or if they don't know, or they have a question about something. Hey, I'd rather you ask and find out what the bad answer is.
Yeah, I know.
Or make
I
a
know
mistake and get in trouble.
here in Nebraska, if you have tags for 2 deer, you can shoot one and turn and shoot the next one. I've had that. I actually had one time I was in my tree stand. I hear this deer come walking down on my right, so I turn around, and then as I'm at full draw waiting for it to step out where I can shoot, I hear another one from behind me coming the other direction. So
Oh boy.
I shoot this one and watch where it goes. And then I turn around and here's the other one coming. So I load another arrow, draw back, and shoot the other one. So I shot 2 within just a matter of 2 minutes. Then the work starts. 2 to drag out, 2 to field dress, and to the process, But
well, that's when you got to call a buddy. It's called phone a friend.
yeah. Well, fortunately, I wasn't by myself, and I had to drag them out by myself. But still, dragging out 2 deer, because you shot them.
Oh
it's like,
boy.
I wasn't going to pass them up.
Yeah, definitely.
I had the tags for them, and I know one time I had to, I was in the same tree stand. This deer's come walking on his path, and I don't know what I did, but I missed, and that arrow hit the tree. It was on the other side of it. It scared it. It run around a circle closer to me, so I was able to load in that arrow, had closer shot. Because it did. My bow going off didn't scare him. It's when the arrow hit the tree. And I never did find where the arrow hit. It was stuck in some tree. It's probably still hanging there. Probably well embedded in the tree, because that's probably been 10, 15 years ago now.
Yeah. Well, buddy, I'll tell you what, I got to run today, but I really enjoyed talking today about everything and going over a lot of stuff. I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime and talk about actually archery tactics that I use for hunting, or maybe that kind of stuff too, that, definitely, teaching people some other stuff that I know.
I do one of these every week, so I'd be glad to have you back on and talk about, tactics. This was kind of interesting on talking about calls, and it was interesting that, you talked about, woodworking, and that's one of my hobbies, and making calls is another hobby I have. I didn't get into
and
it
just,
like you did, but still.
The first introduction. Yeah. I mean, like the first introduction of myself being on here, and just, understanding like where you come from, and then you can, I think a lot of times when guys get on a podcast, people really don't know their level of expertise or where
Right.
they've been or how they've done stuff. So some people judge off of your experience. Well, who's this Yahoo? Why you have him on here? Like, what's he know? Or how some people are judgmental in their own minds. They're not going to come out and say it or whatever. But me myself,
Right.
I would, okay. So what do you know? What have you done? Before you're going to try and teach me something, what do you know? Or something like that. If you have like a so-called expert or somebody that has been there for a while, what is your background? You're more apt to listen to somebody that's had a lot more experience or know a lot more about a subject than somebody that's just some Joe Schmo off the street.
Right. And that's why I call it Arch Talk 101, because that's normally your beginning. When you're taking classes, 101 is the first class you take. And I kind of focus more towards beginners and helping them get started. And if I wanted to only talk to experts, then I might call it Archer Talk 901 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just want to deal with the beginners and not just really that kind of not quite right, but I focus on beginners, but there's always archers out there that are more advanced, and we can help teach the new ones, new archers, some things to help them through some of their struggles. And and that's what I'm focusing here. I've got all kinds of stuff. My first podcast was how to look at your first bow. What do you need to know before you go to the bow shop? I started out, it's like, here's what somebody that's never shot before, what do you need to know? And then it kind of developed and all kinds of stuff, and like I said, I think this is podcast number 57, and I've been doing this for quite a while now. So there's all kinds of information, if you got a question on something, it's like how to correctly set up a tree stand. I did a podcast on that. What kind of first aid stuff you need. There's all kinds of stuff in there. And, if there's any questions anybody has, just let me know. And I'll research the subject.
Well, and you know what, you just touched
on
something. Yeah. Well, that's something you just touched on there. Just brought back another great point. You're talking about first aid, what you need maybe to take into the stand with you.
Right.
For first aid, you fall out of a tree. Let's just numerous things. Biggest thing was I was in the military when my dad had a heart attack first day of deer season in 1997, and I was overseas when it happened. So somebody there had a bear aspirin to give them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like knowing that kind of stuff. And I've been a professional guide out west for turkey hunting in Washington State, Colorado, the last 7, and other states that I've done. We take a backpack out there. You never know. Could a guy get shot? Could a guy get? You never know. We got mountain lion. I mean, you get attacked by a bear. You don't know. So you have to be prepared with that first aid stuff too. So I mean, I got such a generalized different discussion that we could go off into little things, but you know what I mean? Like,
right.
But that's a good point for your listeners to listen to, just stuff like that, first aid, I could go off on a tangent about that, things that I've experienced, you know what I mean? Like hunters and, guy blew out his knee one time. I mean, just stuff like, that you run into, that you could possibly run into, make somebody think twice about, maybe they need something when they go out into the woods, or just make them think about it. Maybe that saved their life that day.
Yeah. And I carry a compass on my backpack. I have a big backpack. Sometimes I carry too much stuff. I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. And I remember one time I was going into my tree stand. I had a buddy with me. We had his tree stand set up, and I'd walked into my tree stand. I'd just go right to it all the time. And his was a little bit further deeper in. So I took him to his tree stand because he didn't know the area. And So I'm walking up to my tree stand. I said, "Oh, it's right over here. I'll just head right over here." I walked past it. Like, okay, I know the area. I'm too far north of my tree stand. I walk back. Next thing you know, I'm way south. And it's like, now I have no clue where I'm at. And I knew if I headed east, I'd get to, like a service road down there that the Game and Parks use for going back field there. So I got out my compass. Okay, now I know where north is. Okay, walk right out to the trail, come back to where I come in, walk straight to my tree stand. Now I knew if I was keep walking, I was either going to run into the river or run into the road or run into a fence because it's kind of fenced in. It's it's one of the Game and Parks properties, so it's kind of fenced in so that you kind of know what the property line is. Now they were just normal 4-foot fence, barbed wire fences, so deer just step over them. But things like that. Carry water, carry all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Extra flashlights, extra knives,
yeah,
saws.
I remember my dad telling me a story one time where we started hunting that. It's called the Queehana Wildlife Area. It's 1.5 million acres of forest property. You could be walking for the next 6 days and it's cold out, you'll be frostbit by the time we figure you out, so.
Yeah.
But definitely I enjoyed today, and it was awesome talking to you, and I'm glad you called me for the podcast. Definitely glad to be a guest. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on another day.
Yeah, definitely sounds great, Roy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, I'd like to thank you for being on the show. It's been amazing. Your stories are really good, and I think our listeners are gonna really enjoy some of the information that we give them today. And so, my name is Roy Canterbury.
Like I said.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say thank you again for inviting me on the show. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah. So once again, my name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101 with Shawn Kotchey, and we'll see you next week. Make sure you look in the description below. I have a link to the Facebook group. I also have a link to the form you fill out for your 15-minute consultation call. I don't charge for that, just to see if it's something for you. And that's where you can find the information. You can always get a hold of me if you have any questions. I'm available on the group or on chat. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.